This is the Prophetic Worship Podcast. I am Ali McFarlane, and on this episode, we discuss how do you get your well done, good and faithful servant. Tune in. Hello and welcome to the Prophetic Worship Podcast. I am Ali McFarlane, and today I am joined by the lovely Dee Bradbery.
Hello.
How is it going?
I am having a great day. How are you?
I'm really good. I hope the listeners understand that this is the whole worship department here at GPA.
Yeah.
They'd be like, why
we
are
showed
these
up.
two on here all the time? Well, honestly, this is what makes GPA worship happen. Of course, we tap into everyone else's departments.
Yes.
We have the lovely Caris in the room with us today. She is part of our media and marketing. So she is taking some photographs, and I think she'll jump on a podcast later.
Yep.
But yes, this is it.
Yes, we do love our shared department teams. We lean into the strength of others quite often.
We do. We do.
Yes, yeah.
But yes, we were just trying to get comfortable on this couch.
Yes. So for those who are listening, we are currently seated on a couch. We decided to have a very casual approach with this whole podcast and how we're presenting it to try and be really relaxed and make people feel welcome. So if you're watching this, you'll see what we're talking about. But if you're listening, we're on a couch and we have discovered it's more awkward than you think.
It's really awkward because these microphones are super heavy.
Yes.
And the couch is quite deep.
Yes.
And I'm kind of one of those humans that doesn't love to have my feet on the floor.
Okay.
And so we have these lovely, everything's textured as well, which I keep finding myself stroking cushions during the podcast.
Because we're quite tactile people.
Yes,
and
we're
textures
tactile.
are really fun. And yeah, I fidget all the time. I don't really think I can sit still. If I'm sitting still or stationary, it's probably because there's another part that's moving. Like I might be wiggling my toes or tapping my fingers.
I'm the exact same way.
So yes, so there's a lot of tactile things.
We are the kind of kids that on your report we're like, can't get them to sit still, find it hard to pay attention.
Yep.
Daydreamers.
Yes.
That's probably us.
Yeah. So another fun part of the set design for those listening is there's a bunch of plants around us as well that have been beautifully positioned by the wonderful Caris, who's got a great eye.
Yeah.
But there is behind us. There's a few plants, some of which I caught Ali sticking gum in when we were recording.
Okay. So we're already cabled up. You know, I'm comfortable on my seat. It's a deep couch.
Finally got
the
a
bin is at
comfortable
least
spot.
a whole room away. And so when I've had the gum in my mouth and we're just about to start, I just took it out and put it in the plant pot.
So I found that quite enjoyable. So thank you.
I
Thank
did
you for that.
remove it though after we
Yes.
were done.
You were responsible.
Yes. Because they're
So-
not my plants, they're Erin's plants. Thank you, Erin. We love you. And so, yeah, I didn't want to poison them. So we'll go for that.
Yep.
Yes.
So anyway, that's us. That's where we're seated. So that's my day.
Yes.
It's great.
So I think we're going to try and put this episode in probably around third, I think is probably the plan. So already you've heard quite a lot about me. And so I really wanted to just give Dee the opportunity to share a little bit about who she is as we segue into some thoughts that we're currently living in our department and
Yes.
in our volunteer team. So we won't give anything away, but Dee, would you just tell us who you are, where you come from, and what have you spent your life, what have you given your life to?
Yeah, so I am from Australia, from a city called Ipswich, which is awesome. One of the best cities in the planet. Born and raised there, lived there my whole life. Multi-generations on one side have grown up in Ipswich. And my mum is Irish, so her family moved over when she was a small child. So half of my family is Irish, half of my family is very Australian. And then I have grown up basically music throughout my whole childhood, into my teenage years, into my adulthood, which has been incredible. And with that has come being involved in teams and serving on teams. So my Irish grandparents are also pastors.
Okay.
And so I grew up in church, in their congregation. And very early on in my childhood, I got to be in the band. So I think I started drumming on team when I was about 8 or 9 years old.
That's amazing.
Which is very fun. And so from there, being in that worship team environment and then going to youth group and playing guitar and drums for youth band and then also church as well. And then as I've gotten older and grown up, it's just different roles and functions within worship teams and different jobs. So I also worked my most recent job before coming here to GPA was working as a gigging musician. Yeah. So as a solo artist, singing, songwriting, performing, different venues and that kind of thing, and also doing some session musician work as well. So
really good. Yeah. So like, just in case you haven't picked it up, Dee is an incredible musician. She can pick up just about anything and get some great sound out of it. And we love that about you. And basically in the summer, you decided to come here for 6 weeks. You were traveling with your family.
Yep.
And called and basically said, we love you guys. Would it be okay if I volunteered for 6 weeks? And so you stepped out of your life in Australia, which involved leading worship in a church setting. Yep. You were a campus leader. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Yep.
And coming to us for 6 weeks. And then actually going back to Australia.
Yes.
And then coming back. Talk to us a little bit about that transition and what you gave up there to come here too, and why you did that.
Yeah, so Holy Spirit actually told me to reach out and see if I could come and volunteer for 6 weeks. And at that point, I was like, wow, no one actually knows who I am. I have no connection aside from the fact that I've listened to some online content. And so, so that was really quite remarkable that I got the opportunity to sink into the team environment and, serve with you with worship stuff, as well as just kind of fluttering around, being involved in a lot of different random tasks as well, which is great. But God really started to ignite something in my spirit when I was here, just visiting. And I could really feel some big things opening up on my insides. Like God was really just pulling some things up and making me aware of things I probably hadn't been aware of before. And so, my mindsets were getting shifted. My heart and my spirit were getting kind of opened to this it was just so life-giving. I just had this injection of life where God's hand was on it. And it's just so exciting, when you have those moments. And so, so I got to experience that in the summer. And then I had to go back home to do some work and some drumming contracts and that kind of thing. And so, I got to go back. But when I got back to Australia after being here, I was very unsure of where to file that away. How do I make that experience make sense? Because in my head, I hadn't really planned on making a dramatic shift at any, So there we are. I'm back in Australia. And then the next thing Holy Spirit says, it's time to pack up all of your stuff and move.
Yeah.
And I think part of me was relieved because I'm like, that's really great because I got this glimpse. I got a view into a window of a life in Glasgow when I was here visiting. And so I was excited to see that kind of like, what is God going to do with that? Yeah. But then on the other side, it's like, wow, I've lived my whole life in Australia and I actually don't know what it means to step out of that context, to move literally across the other side of the globe to start life from scratch with new friends, new
everything.
New everything. Yes. Everything is different.
From the ground up.
Yeah, like my family, I have no family here, aside from the family God has gifted me with here. Yeah. But so left all my family and friends and my whole kind of ecosystem and years and decades of life in Australia behind to step out and start a new venture in Glasgow.
Yeah, and we're so glad you did. We literally prayed hard that she would come back because I remember you leaving. And I am an emotional person. I do get quite attached. But I remember just being like, I'm actually not going to say goodbye because I actually might break my heart. And because we just had such a good time together. Yeah. There was a real connection, a synergy between us and an ability it just felt like you fitted in from the word go.
Absolutely.
I didn't have to hold your hand and take you around everyone and tell you how to make friends. You just immediately were in and about it. And I was thinking, this is brilliant. Yeah. And I remember you said to me when you were here, you said, it's really hard for me to think about going home because for the first time in my life, I feel like I've been pulled up. And everywhere else that I've been in my life, people have said to me, go on, Dee, you can do it. But there's been this sense that you've had to pull yourself up. There's been a striving, a having to pioneer a way for yourself. And for the first time you felt like, oh, actually these people are able to give me a hand and they're desperate for me to come up. And that really marked me, as I was thinking, because you just don't know how people experience this environment when they come in.
Yeah.
And so that was a real blessing to hear that was like your experience. I think that has kind of continued since you've got here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, initially it's quite fun, but we've started this conversation in our core team in the more recent weeks that has been a little bit challenging, I think, for all of us. And we've had to really evaluate where we're at and what we're doing in order to ask God, like, what should I be doing and what do I need to give up in order to fulfill the assignment on my life? And we were at a worship leader development night, which is what I call it. It's like just like our core team night. A few of you guys were around my house and I was talking about the parable of the talents. And I was talking about how I said, I'd actually been in a conversation in Jamaica. I went on my first international ministry trip invite to Jamaica, which was incredible. And I sat with Emma and Sam for lunch. And I said, I'm actually having a really hard time because I'm seeing things that I did not think were possible in a lifetime, dreams and ambitions and things that I had that I wanted to happen, coming through the door so fast that I actually don't know what should I be dreaming about next.
Yeah.
And of course, Emma, in all of her wisdom, said, well, when this season comes, Ali, the question that you start to have to ask Jesus is, Jesus, how do I get my well done, good and faithful servant? And so this started this whole wrestle on my insides. And of course, once I had kind of started to touch that wrestle, I love to just invite the team into it.
Yeah.
And so we'd already been in this kind of process of deconstructing what worship leadership looks like. And we want to be really clear, we're not saying that there shouldn't be a leader, someone that is the point person on a platform. We're not talking about that. But we're saying, actually, we've said for generations that worship leadership looks like standing up the front, singing a lead vocal, maybe playing a guitar. Some people can play a piano, but that's what worship leadership looks like.
Yeah, is a vocal leadership on stage.
And what I said to you guys when you came for worship leader development was, I am not questioning whether you can do that role. You're all here because you can lead worship in that capacity. But my question is, should you lead worship in that capacity? And I think when Emma brought this thought to my mind, it started to put even better language around that wrestle. And it was like, well, you can do this stuff, but will it get you your well done, good and faithful servant?
Yeah.
And we know that in the parable of the talents, the well done, good and faithful servant is given to those who invest where the master has given them gift. And that has, I'll let you tell your kind of part of the story, but it's really opened up for every member of our team a wrestle on our insides as to, well, actually as creatives, we can do a lot. We can touch a lot. If you ask me, what can I do? I can make cakes. I can paint wall murals. I can do makeup. I could probably cut hair if I wanted. My mum was a hairdresser. You know, I can do a lot of things. It's not the point. But should I? Yeah. So just talk to me about that conversation and what it started on your insides and the kind of journey that you've been on in the past few weeks.
Yeah. So I'll, as a disclaimer, like I'm in the middle of this in the sense of it's still quite fresh revelation and something that you've just recently put to us as a team.
Yeah.
And in that has been a lot of it's been very life-giving and almost relieving in some ways because you recognize, I guess, maybe false responsibilities or things that you project that you should be doing just because you can, because you have the skill set. And so I think when you proposed that question to us as a team, it began to stir something on my insides going, I actually, like, what is my portion in this season, Jesus? Like, what is it that you have set before me to do? And he began to maybe highlight that there was some unpicking and undoing of things I have previously done in seasons before that he's asking me to lay down in this season.
Yeah.
And that's confronting and vulnerable. And it kind of is like, I don't know who I would be if I'm not doing these things, or it begins to touch in these kind of really sensitive places of I guess identity in some ways, because you might identify as a worship leader, or I identify in the performance or the outcome that I can achieve. And so to then have Jesus come in and be like, hey, could you just put that down? And just lay it at my feet for a season. It's like, okay, like I want to, but I don't know how to, or I'm not sure who I would be if I don't have this, or if I'm not currently activated in this. So I guess to be more specific in answering your question, one of the things that came up was worship leading. And the chat around actually practically picking up a guitar, creating a set list for Sundays, and then on a Sunday during our service to step out and lead the congregation and lead the team with a plan. We've got a set list. We're in this trajectory, and that activation of a skill set that I have, I guess, spent years trying to get better at and spend a lot of energy and time in building in my life. And when I left Australia and moved to Glasgow and made that shift, I could sense there was definitely a big life uphaul, because obviously I've left a nation to move to a different nation. So that's big in itself. But on my insides and on, I guess, on a spiritual and an emotional level, I could sense that God was really wanting to begin again something different and something new, and it was a completely different season. I didn't know the language. I didn't know what that was. And then you asked us this question, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I've been activated even coming here to Glasgow, assuming that what I was active in Australia and in my serving capacity, I copied that and I pasted that here as a template to go, well, I'll just carry on doing these things. And that looks like worship leading, that looks like singing, playing guitar, in that leadership capacity, because I was previously running a team, just like you run this team. I was in that position before. So when I came here, I just instantly had that mindset. Like I didn't even bother asking Jesus about that. I just was like, well, that's just what I'll do, because that's what I was doing before. And when I got here, the experience was actually quite different than I had expected. And I remember the first time I actually led at our Sunday service, I was a bit of a turmoil on my inside. I was a bit of a mess, because I was like, I get jitters and I get that kind of like, before I get up on stage, like, you know, the platform to lead, you can feel the weighted responsibility, which sort of in my physical frame sits a little bit like butterflies in my stomach, and you kind of feel like there might be rocks in your belly or something. Totally. But because you're like, Lord Jesus, I just want to honor you. And I kind of, you feel that, I guess, like a heavenly burden. Like I'm responsible for this. There's a weightedness to it.
Sure.
I want to do a good job and lead your people well into your presence. So that is typical. I would get that every week without fail whenever I was leading. But when I got here, it sat differently in my physical frame, and it just felt a lot more displacing than I was used to. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm paying attention to this. And, you know, a couple of times later, paying attention to that. And then you propose this question, and I was like, I actually think I'm operating outside of what God is asking and requiring of me in this season. I'm carrying on something that I have previously doing from a behavioral, like activated place. But that doesn't mean that I need to do that here or should do that here. And I think that was probably quite confronting, because I've worked I've put a lot of energy into developing that skill. And to then have to, for a season, just be like, oh, just step back, actually felt quite confronting. And it felt like maybe I was taking a step back, like regressing even in my in my development, or even so you have all of these thoughts swirling around, and it's go on. No, I was gonna say, but at the same time, relieving in a sense.
Well, I think that, you know, because I sit on this in the role of, you know, your friend and maybe a bit of a mentor, a leader, then I can see what I think God is saying about you, and I can hear the voice of God over you. But there's something about you having to hear it for yourself.
Yeah.
And so we as leaders, we often sit in this place of trying to help you to hear God and to help you to ask intelligent questions of the Spirit of God, that you would come to your own conclusions about the things that God has for you. And I think that often we are looking for other people to bring revelation from God to us. We love a prophet for that reason, right?
Yeah.
But the truth is that if you can hear it from Jesus for yourself, it's far more transformational.
Yeah.
And it anchors you in a way that if I gave you the word would not anchor you.
If you told me that I wasn't worship leading, I would have probably been frustrated with you.
Yes, exactly.
But because you were facilitating a question that was probably significant for me to wrestle with, but I got to do that with Jesus. It's like, the authority, it transfers easier for me to take, even though it is a difficult thing to negotiate. It's
And I think what we have known, obviously we have no previous experience of you as a human being. All I know is that you rocked up here for 6 weeks. I literally was like, Dee, can I put you on drums? And you were like, yeah, I'd love that. And off you went on drums. And I was like, this girl plays drums according to the Spirit like no one else. Now, we have got some incredible drummers here in Scotland, and dare I say, some more technically proficient than you are.
For sure, yeah.
And we've just some really great friends that are just incredible drummers. But the thing that you bring to the table that I haven't found in other drummers is this ability to hear the rhythm of heaven, to hear what's going on in the spirit realm, and then to get it through your limbs onto the instrument. And what I really love about my team is that they're all leaders. Like, I don't say that with like, oh yeah, I'm just trying to boost their egos. Like, that's just not it. Like, genuinely you lead. And I have this rule in the team where I say, I want you to fight me for my leadership. And so for some of the girls who are vocalists, I'm saying to them, I will not give up the leadership of this song until you fight me for my leadership. And if you're not leading, I will continue to lead. And so we have this fun wrestle. Now, if you're not in our culture, it could sound like a little bit bullish.
The point is that you want people to come in strong. Like, if you're going to lead strong. And don't enter in wishy-washy.
Absolutely.
To come in guns blazing.
I do not want the room to be aware that we've switched the role of leadership in this moment. I don't want there to be an awareness of it. I want it to be that you can seamlessly move through everyone's giftings and anointings without the room going, oh, what happened there? And so that's the kind of wrestle. And what I love is that when you are on drums, you wrestle me.
Yeah.
And there's a leadership that comes out of you when you're on drums that I don't see necessarily when you take a microphone. Yeah. And I love it because it's so fun. I'll be going, oh, come on, maybe a little bit down. And she's like, no, there's another level here. And I'm like, okay. And so off we go together. And so I have been asking Jesus, like, how do I value each member of the team? How do I see their leadership? We've got Caris in the room, and Caris has a vocal and an anointing that opens up the heavens.
Yeah.
There's a realm that she opens that I cannot touch by myself. Luckily, when she's around and she opens it for me, I'm allowed to enter with her. But there's something that she opens up, an anointing that she carries, even for throne room, for the angelic, and it sits up here in the realms, and I cannot do it. I genuinely cannot do it. And so her leadership, when she steps into that portion, her portion of leadership, she brings something to a whole room in her leadership that I can't bring. Yeah. And it's the same for you on drums. And so that's why we're rebelling against almost this model of the person at the front is the only leader on the platform, because that's not my experience. And it's not how, I don't want there to feel like there's a lesser role of leading on an instrument
than there is,
and
none is more superior than the other
No.
in contribution to what is happening on the team, because we're all together.
We're together.
Pursuing the Spirit.
Yeah.
And we're all supporting one another to go
Yeah.
where the Spirit is leading. And I think that's what I found really great. And I love that about the trust to be able to lead on my instrument, even though it's not a vocal demonstration. I mean, drums are pretty obnoxious, really. You can't get away from them.
Yeah.
And so the drum is going off, I guess, that the band almost has to follow. But just the ability to be able to take that.
Yeah, and I think my question to you has been, how do you lead in the nations on this instrument? How do you become a voice for leadership on percussion? How do you teach people how to hear in the heavens, and to see your leadership in that space? And I personally am so excited. I was with a worship leader the other day having lunch, and I said, I've got this drummer. She's incredible. She opens up the realms on rhythm, and she hears the spirits in heaven, and she hears how they sound rhythmically. And she went, when is she doing a workshop? I want to come. And I was like, yeah, I can't wait. I don't know when we're going to do it. We're going to do worship school. There'll be a rhythm section. And I personally feel that is so exciting.
Yeah.
I do think that there is a grief that comes in seasons like this where you have to lay down the thoughts of what your life was going to be.
Yep.
And it's really important. This is not forever.
This is not a permanent season.
No.
Because I know that God has cultivated that skill set within me and given
Absolutely.
me the time and space to grow and develop in that way. But it's just weird to even put it down for a minute.
Totally.
Yeah. But yeah, so I agree with what you're saying in this. It's only temporary.
I think I went through something similar in the actual stepping into this role, and the fact that the previous worship director, I was his second in command, and I actually loved it. Like, I'm not even just saying that. I genuinely loved the ability to step in and lead and to do kind of what Caris does, which is open the realms that I can touch, do the thing that I'm anointed to do, and then step back and think, it's not my responsibility. And I loved it. I loved being the second. And I dreamed up a 10-year plan of what it looked like to be me in this space. And I honestly had fallen in love with what I thought my next 10 years was going to look like. Yeah. And so when our previous worship director, Luke Finch, came off of staff, and I was asked to step up into this role, the months that followed that decision were full of grief. And the grief was, I was sad that Luke was gone. I was sad that, I wasn't going to get to do the things with him that I thought I was going to get to do. But honestly, the biggest grief that I had was that I had to give up my 10-year plan. I had to give up all of the dreams and the envisionment of what I thought the next 10 years was going to look like. Yeah. I had to give it up and say, Jesus, what do you say? And, the annoying thing is that Jesus has told me my whole life that I'm supposed to lead.
Yeah.
And at one point, I could not harmonize. In fact, I only learned to harmonize 2 years ago, and I've been worship leading for about a decade.
Yeah.
And when I asked Jesus about it, he said, well, I can't let you harmonize, because if you harmonize, you will not lead.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, I'd love to say I'm not that disobedient, but clearly he's like, well, just put some practical things in to keep you on the straight and narrow, babe.
Yeah.
And so I really resonate with the season that you're in, with this moment. And my encouragement is, it's seasonal. And as your leader, I am so excited about what God is going to do in your obedience to just set this thing to the side for a second and to go, Jesus, if this is where I get my well done, good and faithful servant, I'm all in.
Yeah. And so just to add into that, like there is a sense of loss in laying it down. Yeah. And it feels sacrificial because you're like, well, I've held on to this. And it's been really significant in seasons. It's helped get me through seasons. It's been my outlet. It's been this, big part of my identifying as like a worship leader or whatever in that particular way. But the excitement of what God is going to do, in the sense of like drumming makes me come alive like nothing else
So good.
in this season. And actually it's something that is kind of, I'll say, a full circle, because drumming is where I started. But I had to lay drumming down in my progression in
that's
worship,
really good.
in my worship team. So I started that way. And then progressed to guitar, and then I progressed to being only ever really rostered on to vocals and guitar. And I actually lost drumming, and I had to lay drumming down in the context of church and worship teams. And now
You get to pick it
I
back
get to
up.
pick it back up, and there's such a life that comes, and the excitement that comes, and even knowing that, you know, God is requiring of me a greater leaning in to the skill set to apply to the drums in this season. I'm like, what are you going to do with it, Lord? Like, and hearing in the spirit and hearing rhythms and sounds is something that's so new. And so I'm like, all of these things are so exciting. And so you've got this kind of twofold. You've got one side, you're like, oh, I'm a little bit sad because I'm actually maybe more uncomfortable, and sad is maybe not quite the right emotion, but it's like, oh, it's unknown, and I don't know what to do. And where I had security, or where I had safety, or where I thought I had established as foundations, is now kind of just being shifted, just enough to make me go, I don't like it. It's different, and I don't know what I'm doing. But then on the other side, you've got I've got drumming, and what God is asking me to pick up again in this season is just so worth it.
So good.
Yeah, like I said, in the middle of all of this, so who knows what will happen.
Yes.
Stay tuned for more episodes, because I'm sure it will unfold.
We'll keep you updated.
But it's a really beautiful thing. The excitement is real.
Yeah, I think this, you know, we could probably bring on any member of our team in this moment, and we would hear a similar story of the wrestle after asking this question. And so I think worship leaders, musicians, anyone that's involved, that's listening to this podcast, we really would encourage this question to be asked in teams, and to understand that there might be something where you have to lay something down that feels a little bit painful, but ultimately the joy and the reward that comes in the obedience, and that comes with stepping into the new thing. And honestly, worship needs new things. We are stuck in the cycle, you know, we're hoping that at some point there's going to be some real pioneering in this movement. But it will require us to lay down some old things and to step into some new things. And so we just really encourage you as worshipers to get before Jesus and to ask the question, Jesus, where do I get my well done, good and faithful servant? What is my portion in this season? Where should I invest my time, my energy, and my cash? And then go ahead and be obedient in this season. Dee, do you want to say anything? Do you want to pray for the people?
Yeah, I just to acknowledge the vulnerability that it requires, and God is asking something of you, and to be okay with entrusting it to Him, because ultimately what He's put on your insides and the desires that He has for you and for your development, for your progression, for deeper relational intimacy and connection with Him far outweighs whatever task that you're currently involved in. So to I guess be open-handed in the releasing of the things that God is asking you to lay down, but to also be open-handed to receive the new things that He has for you. That's and the really new good. Things He's wanting to do within you as well in the season. So I just bless you to have the courage to ask the big questions. I bless you to have the wisdom to know how to put to action, or how to implement the things that Jesus begins to show you and begins to speak to you about. I'm excited for you on this journey as well, because I know what it's doing to me, and I'm only just beginning. But there is life in it, and God is going to do something quite remarkable and miraculous whenever you step out in obedience. So awesome. Bless you guys.
Thank you so much, Dee.
Yeah, thank you.
See you later, guys.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Prophetic Worship Podcast. If you want to stay connected, you can find us at www.gpaworship.com, or alternatively, you can find us on social media at GPA Worship. We will see you on the next episode.